Pop up. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another great edition. It's actually College Game Day edition of Account Based Friday. We've got a special guest all the way from the Bay Area, very early morning for Arnie. We'll give a proper introduction in a moment. Grateful to have Arnie joining us with his CRO background and his sales background. He'll have a very fresh and unique perspective. So super excited to have Arnie joining us today. Each week we start off with a poll, and this week is no different. This week's poll, we talk about a metric called net revenue retention. And a lot of companies are starting to kind of see this combination of a slower economy of acquisition. So there seems to be a lot of focus now on the other side of the funnel or other side of the bow tie of retaining and upselling customers. And so this week's question was, who owns the metric of net revenue retention, which is really the total dollars that you're retaining after a certain cohort goes through? Is that same cohort spending the same, more or less year over year? And really the motivation for this question came up because some marketers that we've run across have pivoted a little bit of their energy, actually quite a bit of their energy, from acquisition over to the retention and customer marketing side. But the majority of people said CS and CX were the owners here. Very few had marketing owning it. In the comments, there was one person saying, "What about sales?" And we'll probably get to that in a moment. But Megan, what was your reaction to this?
Yeah, the first thing I noticed was not seeing sales. Like, to me, that is an appropriate place for this to live, because very often it is the sales team supporting renewals and expansion within existing customers. If they are but it should live with whoever is directly responsible for that. So sales, CS, marketing to a degree. But I think the way that I've seen that represented is, at least in other places where I've worked, actually everyone is gold on some attainment of retention. Because if you think about it, product, marketing, sales, customer success or service, whatever, everybody has a role to play in making sure that your customers get impact. And I think the trick is saying, not keeping it at such a high level, like, oh, everyone's responsible for retention. What you want is within your functions to break it into the element that function needs to contribute to the customer journey for retention or expansion, and track the presence and quality of that activity, so that in the end, the entire company can feel good about having made the right contributions to getting to that NRR number. That's a little more complicated, but a wise CFO from Serious Decisions once told me, never goal people on things that they can't directly control. And I've taken that to heart. So that's how I would say, break this down. It's really everyone's objective, but break it down into the things that people have direct responsibility for and track that. But Arnie, I'm super excited. Arnie and I had the pleasure of working together for a little while at Winning by Design, and I've been delighted to see your great success after you went into a direct leadership role in Ethena, and just definitely excited to hear a little bit more about your perspective on our question of the day, but also you have been producing some incredible content in your Revenue Architect blog, and I was particularly drawn to a post on doing a great revenue retrospective. So excited to talk about that. But first, what's your take on our poll?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Meg. It's great to be here, and great to be with you too, John, and great to have a chance to talk to your audience. Yeah, I think similar to you, Meg, you can't goal somebody on something that they can't control. It doesn't really work. And also having shared goals doesn't really work. So I think about NRR, some people call it NDR, but like unpacking it into, you've got logo retention, you've got kind of revenue retention in terms of like, you sort of mitigating its downgrades, and then you've got expansion. And I think you got to think about what's the motion for each of those, and then who owns which piece in the motion. So, for example, logo churn. Well, also it depends on your ACV, because if you're a self-serve business, it's really a marketing and product problem. But let's talk about a company that has a sales motion with a sales team. You've got take the expansion piece. Your CS team is probably responsible for generating those CSQLs, kind of like an SDR team, would help a sales team on a new logo. But then your sales team is responsible for closing them, and the win rate part and the ACV part, and controlling the sales cycle. With the revenue churn, I think it's CS teams responsible for making sure that they're multi-threading with customers to ensure that when the renewal comes up, everybody who's using each piece, each feature, or each line item on the invoice is seeing that recurring impact. So I think there's a lot of different pieces. You just got to unpack the different motions. I find that it's NRR is like an outcome, and to your point, it's really about goaling people on the inputs or the things that they can control more so than like the company outcome. It's like, who owns revenue? There's this job title now called Chief Revenue Officer, but Chief Revenue Officer doesn't own revenue. Then what does the CEO do? What does the CFO do? So I think you gotta break it down into what people can actually control, and give what their team can control.
Absolutely. And thank you for that perspective. I appreciate it. Let's talk now a little bit about the Revenue Architect blog. What was the genesis of this, and what are some topics that are really capturing your audience's attention right now?
Yeah, so the genesis, really quickly, I've been giving people ad hoc advice as long as I can remember. Like, people ask me questions, I love to kind of answer and give my perspective. And then during the pandemic, I found myself consulting and had a chance to see just a large number of companies very quickly. Whereas previously, I'd been at one company for 4 years, the next one for 4 years. And so, you have a different point of view. And as I saw dozens of companies, could just kind of see the same problems over and over again in marketing, in sales, in CS, in process and skills. And I just started writing them down. And I was going to write a book, and I had like 30,000 words written. And I was talking to some friends, and they were like, like, why don't you do a blog? That's like, that's like 6 months of content for a blog. And so I decided to do a blog. Substack came along, I think, at the right time for me. And I just started writing down and sharing it. And it just keeps growing. It's been really great. I think my approach has always been to give people very specific and actionable advice and break down the problems. I think it comes from my product background. I spent the first 10 years of my career in product and engineering. So I have kind of a very analytical, customer focused approach to breaking down problems, and applying that to sales is sort of what I do in my first CRO job. And, my goal is when people read the blog, it's they get, yesterday's post or whatever, and they can forward it around their team and actually do something with it. And I think that's always been my goal. I found when I was looking for advice as a CRO, there was a lot of kind of aspirational content, like wake up, seize the day, have a great mindset, all that kind of stuff, which I do think is very important, especially in sales, because it's a job where you lose more often than you win, and you have to have that kind of athlete mindset, I suppose. But increasingly generating revenue is more of a science than it is an art. And you can break it down on a lot of the problems. Because I saw the same problems over and over again, I realized you could break them down. And obviously, Meg, when I met you, and we did work at Winning by Design, and I saw how Winning by Design was approaching the problem in the same way. That's what really resonated for me, and seeing it all kind of come together. And I find, like, as a CRO, as an exec, you're always going to be, especially in a startup, your business always goes up and down. It's never like a linear kind of growth curve. And so you need to be able to handle those ups and those downs equally, and break down, okay, why were we successful? Why are we not successful? And, using data and using kind of frameworks is just a good way to do that.
Wow, you got quite a bit of information there, Arnie. And I should mention to our audience, if you have a question, pop it up here in chat, and we will bring it up on the screen. Anything related to what Arnie just shared or his blog. And I love how you described the NRR answer and really unpacking it into a lot of different pieces and parts. You mentioned at the very end of your conversation there, you mentioned the framework and how you looked at companies. What framework would you suggest, either in a pre-customer engagement or a post-customer engagement? Like what elements of that framework do you think work well or don't work well in your analysis?
Yeah, I think looking at any B2B business, be it self-serve or sales kind of motion driven, always starting with a customer journey framework. Winning by Design calls it the bow tie, the two-sided funnel, where you've got sort of the left side of the funnel is your new logo piece, and then the right side is your customer growth piece. And just thinking about, okay, I want to find ideal prospects in the market. I want to turn them into customers, and then I want to grow them into ideal customers. An ideal customer being someone that buys as much of my product as possible, and breaking that down into stages. So, in the idea of awareness, which I think about as I'm trying to turn a prospect into a qualified lead, and then turning that qualified lead into an op, and then the op into a customer, and then what's your time to first value, then what's your renewal kind of motion, your impact motion look like, and then what's the expansion piece look like. So there's sort of 6 stages there, and I think then break down each of those with data, and doing that on a regular basis. There's a post on my blog, anyone kind of go there, it's been pinned to the top, but like when you use that framework, you can really quickly see where the weaknesses in your business. So right now, pretty much everyone's saying sales cycles have slowed down and win rates have slowed down. But being able to actually put a number on it and say, like, our win rate was 25%, now it's 20%, measured from the same stage to the same stage. And the reason, if we unpack that by stage, where we're getting stuck is in proposal, because we're finding we need to get more stakeholders involved than we used to, or we're getting stuck in trade because the CFO is coming in at the last minute and demanding some arbitrary discount, or they've hired vendor or Vertus One, and now there's a new procurement process that people didn't know about. But being able to really zero in on why the sales cycle has slowed down, or if op generation has slowed down, is it because there are fewer leads, or is it because the leads are converting to an op at a lower rate? What is the actual cause of the problem? And what I've seen in a lot of companies is that they've having to shift from sort of top of funnel lead acquisition to bottom of funnel, more emphasis on bottom of funnel, and that for some companies that's quite a big switch, because they were spending boatloads on LinkedIn, driving downloads or driving those lead forms on LinkedIn, which is very low intent, and they're having to rethink that, maybe look for more opportunity on Google, or look for more opportunity on review sites, or redoing their SEO program. So there's breaking it down so you can see where the problem is. That's really what the retros process is all about. And then sharing it. The great thing about doing a retro is everything's transparent. Everyone's using the same language. Too many companies you see where marketing and sales point fingers at each other. It's their problems. And the problem is that they're measuring success in different ways. And no one's over the top of them and saying, actually, let's all use the same common language. Because often, in startups, CEOs don't really understand it. They hire a CMO, they hire a CRO. There's an information asymmetry. It's whoever's got the best persuasion skills wins. But you just really need that. If you lay the data out, it becomes very clear where the problem is, especially between marketing and sales. Or why are we churning customers? It's because they never use the product. It's a big reason why people churn, right? Why they never got to first impact? Well, how are you going to get to recurring impact if you never get to first impact, and so on? So and people are, customers are a lot more scrutiny on purchases now. So they don't just buy stuff and then not use it. If they're not using something, it's getting cut. whereas before it could just sit there not being used and nobody was tracking it. So, it's getting to the bottom of those things through that retro. And then you decide what you're going to do about it. And you can come up with a plan for next quarter, and everybody knows kind of what metric we try to move, what initiatives are we going to take and who owns those and that kind of stuff.
I really appreciate the approach you describe in your post and how you think about retrospectives, and I'm in full agreement. I think breaking it down into, again, component parts so that you can really understand what's happening and why, and everyone is using the same definitions and language makes all the difference. But to your point about, whoever has the best persuasion skills wins, even in a data-driven environment, I think there is a bit of that. What is your suggestion for leaders, especially if they've got bad news to share? Do you have any coaching for leaders communicating that data and communicating bad news, and how they can best articulate what's going wrong and what they're going to do about it in a way that they're not going to, get their head handed to them in the board meeting?
Yeah, look, I mean, anytime I've ever had bad news to share to my boss, or someone on my team's had bad news to share to me, the first question is always, what are you going to do about it? And I think, the more senior you are, the more important it is to say, here's a problem, but here's what I'm going to do about it. And you need to, you need to kind of break down the problem so that everyone understands it in the same way, so that the recommendation you have is a logical conclusion of that. If you just say win rates down, everyone's going to have an opinion on how to get win rates up. They're going to be like, throw discounts, throw more stuff, and then the CFO is going to go, no. And there's just be this misalignment in the team, and it's just kind of turns into a like a not a very productive conversation. And so if you can get everybody on the same page about exactly what the problem is, then people can weigh in with their ideas. But you could say, like, look, I think we should do this. This is my, because win rates slowed down, but it's slowed down for this type of customer, not this type of customer. Or it's slowed down when we don't have we thought we needed 3 stakeholders engaged, we actually need 4, and the missing one is this. And therefore it, and it's usually an executive that needs to be engaged. So we need to have an executive engagement program to move deals across the finish line. And you can now give your CEO and your board actual jobs to do. Like, that's actually what they like. Like, when I was a CEO, I'm a CRO now. Like, I love it when people bring me a problem and say, here's what I need you to do, Arnie. I'm like, great. I don't have to think about this. I'll just do it. If someone says, Arnie, I need you to prospect for me, I'll be like, okay, who? And then they tell me these particular companies. They're like, great. I don't need you to write me an email. I'm CRO. I should be able to do my own prospecting, and but I need to be told what to do. And I think what a lot of people, especially earlier in your career, mid-career, they feel intimidated about doing that with their boss. They feel like, I shouldn't tell my boss what to do. But actually, the more senior your boss is, the more direction you need to give them. And your board, the best advice I ever got was, treat your board like they work for you, not you work for them. Because if you walk in thinking you work for them, it's just, they're going to just give you a bunch of random advice based on their last board meeting that they have with a different company. It might not be the best advice. But if you say, here's the problem, I broke it down, here's what needs to be done, here's what I need you to do, good. People, senior leaders like that. They like hearing that. They're like, great, there's somebody knows what they're doing, and yes, I'll do it. And of course, you got to follow through, make sure they do it. And but I think that's the way to handle these kind of bad news situations.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about kind of pointing the CEO in a direction. We see that too as an agency, and in theory, you are hiring an agency to be told what to do, but the more prescriptive that you can be proactively, the better off. I think people are so overwhelmed right now with everything, COVID, the global situation, maybe even this bank situation. It's hard to get peace of mind and to think on any one task when
right.
Headcount's been cut and everybody's doing 2 jobs now. So I think you're onto something there about being really prescriptive of telling people what to do and how to do it.
It's
You know,
really, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like being prescriptive is so important, and being transparent about the problem enables you to be prescriptive. You know, if I say win rates down, I need you to engage with like CFOs for me at the end of a deal. Yeah, you might just go, yeah, sure. Or you'd be like, what about CEOs? Or like, maybe I've got a better idea. And so the more you can say, no, I broke the problem down and we lost these deals because we never got the CFO involved. Then it becomes really, the problem becomes get the CFO involved, and then everyone can pile in on that thing. And it just like focuses the energy around doing fewer things. You know, like when you kind of try and increase the surface area of what you're doing, it always leads to doing things worse because you can't do a lot of things that, you know, equally well. There's just a finite budget for competence in any organization.
Yeah. That to me is one of the biggest things I think that can go wrong in a revenue retrospective, right? You can come out with 27 things you can do. But as our former colleague, Kevin Dorsey used to say, you know, pick one, fix that, move on. And I think that's the hardest thing, right? Is what is that one thing? And also to get people to understand why doing 27 things is never going to be as good as doing one and then moving to the next.
Yeah.
What are some ways, you know, you've helped your, you know, peer leaders or others understand the importance of that prioritization and not taking on too much?
Yeah, I think, you know, data. I mean, like when you see a bunch of ideas listed out as words, it's very hard to say which one's better. Like it's just my opinion. Everyone's got a different opinion. So you know, you kind of need to think about, well, what's the impact of solving this problem versus that one? So let's say my win rate's gone down from 20 to 25%. So it's gone down essentially 20%. Well, what if my conversion from MQL to ops gone down 50%? Well, which one of those should I solve first? And both of them involve sales, because like, do I focus on you know, making sure that there's better feedback on the ops coming in, or do I really focus on this like multi-threading with the CFO thing? Well, you can see, you know, like if whichever one has the higher yield, that's the one that comes to the top of the queue. Like if there's a, oh, our time in trade has gone up 5 days. Our time in the trade, you know, sales stage has gone up 5 days in a 60-day sales cycle. It's not as important as the win rate going down 20% or the MQL to op going down 50%. You know, so just being able to look at them, or look at all of the problems and then stack rank them based on the impact of solving them. And, you know, and sometimes you might say, we can't get MQL to up to go back to where it was because customers have gone out of business or whatever, you know. It's like, so you need some qualitative assessment of it, but at the end of the day, it's like having that list and then discussing that list and agreeing like where the cutoff is. And one of my friends who runs Issue, which is a kind of publishing platform, Joe Herkin, he always says, he says, who is doing what by when? He says, that's all I care about. And, you know, if you can say, you have a project, you have an owner, and you have a deadline, if you start putting those next to everything, it becomes pretty clear when someone's overloaded. And it's, you know, but it's doing, you know, to do something really well, you need to go deep on it. And so just to like come up with a list of things to do, you need to go deep. You need to like have the data and the ownership and the plan. And that's why, you know, doing a few things well is why you have to kind of always reduce the surface area of what you're doing so you can go deeper on it and do it really well. Otherwise, it's just, you know, you're spreading yourself too thin, like you said.
Yeah, excellent advice. And it does require you to have a command of the data, a command of the business, and a command of understanding how much anyone can take on. And I think those are really, really critical skills, especially in times like these where things are more challenging than they were even just a few months ago. I know we are coming up on time. John, any final questions for Arnie?
I guess what's the best way? Like, I want to look at that 30,000 page blog that you did, or 30,000 word blog, but it's the revenuearchitect.com. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Got
And
it.
I put a link in chat to the blog where you can subscribe, which I highly recommend. And also a direct link to the post that has, I think, a very cool template for doing a revenue retrospective. And thank you, Arnie. It's very kind of you to, share your knowledge in a way that people can absolutely take action on. I know I use it and appreciate the guidance. So thank you for that.
Thank you both for having me. It's been great.
Awesome conversation. Thank you, Arnie. And next week, we've got a mystery guest, same time, same place. We look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy Friday. And go UConn.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks again, Arnie. Have a great day.
Thanks, Meg. Take care. Great
You
to see
too.
you.
Bye.